Hello my friends and welcome back to another episode of Flutter Explained. Today we want to get rid of one of the overflow problems that we had whenever we click inside of one of the text fields, and also what we want to achieve is that we can change our username inside of our application. So if we press now Save Profile, we have now our username changed on Firebase. And that's it for today. So let's get started. So where did we stop the last time? The last time we were able to upload an image, like for example that cat image. If I click on it, we can select another image and it's uploading to Firebase and then replace that image with the actual new image, which is pretty good. The next step that we want to take is finishing up that columns down here. For that, we go back to our profile view. And inside of our profile view, what I want to do is to take out the whole column that where all the different things are inside, like username, manage password, and so on. I want to take out and create an own widget for that so that we have a bit better overview here. I go into my folder structure underneath profile and we'll create a new one which called manage profile information widget.dart. After all, it describes best what I want to achieve. So it is a stateless widget here, and I call it manage profile information widget. And we have to import the library of material. Good, now this is green. We go back to our profile view, and now I select what I want to have in that new widget. So all of this column till down here to that ending of that column. I'll Command X, and now I'm entering here the new widget that we created. Because I use auto importer in my case, it immediately imports the right things. So you can see up here that we have already imported the manage profile information widget. If I go now here, I replace this container with the column that I copied. After I fixed the brackets, we can see the view is still looking exactly the same. During the copy process, I figured something out. If I select now the username and I want to enter something, you can see this nice little yellow bar down here. And this is something that we want to fix. So for that, I have to change the expanded down here inside of this column to a flexible. And this will not solve the problem yet, but it makes it flexible, so it will narrow down if it can. And this column has to get a main axis size of main axis size min. So it will take as less space as possible. And last but not least, we want to surround this column with a new widget, which is a single child scroll view. So what happens now is, if I click here inside, we have now a scrollable widget inside. If you don't like that padding surrounding it, then you can do the following. Instead of inside of our profile view, we have surrounded of our manage profile information widget, the padding living. And we can remove it and bring it inside, is what I will do now. So I remove all of that. And you see now there is no padding at all, but this is also not what we want. If we go now inside here, we can say that the single child scroll view inside has another widget with a padding surrounding it. And this padding is at the moment 20, I think. So if I select it, you can see if I scroll now, the whole area is getting selected by that scroll or getting affected by the scroll effect. So if you take a look up here, you can see exactly this the whole widget. So inside of our manage profile information widget, we will have now a lot of state because every text field that we see here will have its own controller. So what we have to do is we have to convert this to a stateful widget. And now it breaks in our application because whenever we change from a stateless widget to a stateful widget, we have to make hot restart. So in our case, this green arrow will help you here. For all the text fields that we see here, we need now a controller. So inside of our state, we will begin to create different controllers like user name, or better display name controller equals a text editing controller. But here I see a problem. The thing is, I want to show or make visible the current selected user in the beginning here so that we have to change actively something. For that, we need an init state function, because we want to initialize that state here with the user that is currently logged in. So how do we get now the user? Because this is a stateful widget, what we could do is we could get it from the profile view. The profile view has already access to the current user. So what we can do is we just give the current user inside and say we want to access the current user. Now it complains, but what we can do is jump inside and fix that. So we will have here a final of the user model object called current user. And we have a constructor, manage profile information widget, which gives this current user inside. And we have to import the user model. That means this widget will have now access to the current user. And what we can do is inside of our init state, we can set the display name controller.text widget.currentUser.displayName. Don't forget, if we want to access from a state object, our main widget object, we have to enter the widget keyword to access it. And now we access the widget, current user, display name. If everything works well, this display name controller will now contain the name, the current username. And this we have to use now inside of our text form field from the username. For that, we will have to add here the parameter controller to this display name controller. And I save now and make a hot reload, and let's see what happens. I go to the profile view and we can see the username that I entered now in Firebase is already visible. That's pretty good, right? So we can use that immediately. The next step, now we want to add also controllers for the other three. I will do that real quickly. So because all of these controllers lives now in our material app, we have also to handle the disposal of them. So that means whenever the widget is getting destroyed, we want also to destroy all of these controllers. So for that, I will create the disposer and say dispose on them. So the next one will be password controller, new password controller, and the repeat password controller. Next step. So I want to do just changing the username. For that, I can remove something here. Let's call it, for example, instead of Miracle Design, we call it Flutter Explained. And now I want to save that, right? If I click now Save Profile, nothing happens, right? We go back and still stays with the old text. This is not what we want to achieve. We want to change the username actually. I already created here down a to-do called save somehow, and the idea is now to save the username. So how could we do that? If we remember that image that I will show you now, you see that we wanted to change to separate the different layers. So now we have only access from the UI to the next layer, that would be the service layer, or better our controllers, right? Our view controllers. And we have a user controller for that. The user controller will then give it further to the Firebase controller, or to the repo controller, how I called it. And this repo controller will then take care of how they handle with Firebase. So with that, we have a nice little layer architecture. So how can we do that now? We also want a function inside of user controller. And how do we access that? Make a break, go down in the comments below, exactly at that point, and write me how we access the user controller. I give you some time. Good. So now we access the locator again, because the locator is our getIt instance where we receive our different classes. So now we get the user controller and have to import the user controller. And with that, we can access everything on that class that we get publicly available through the user controller. So for example, we can update our username, or better, update our display name. And you see maybe that I always struggle between username and display name. Don't get confused, both are the same for me. The problem is Firebase is calling them display names, and so with that I will call them now, or I try to call them now also display name. So but the display name wants to have a string. Actually, it wants to have from so the display name controller gets a text, right? And this is our display name. And this display name we have to give to that update display name function. All right, so what we will do is now we create this update display name function, and that we can do. And if we jump now there, we can see it created already the frame for us inside of the user controller. Now we want to update the display name. The easiest way would be that we say the current user that lives in our user controller. If you remember in the former videos, we can just say display name equals the display name. And that would actually work for some of the views. So what we can try to do is we can change here something and press save, and coming back to the screen, and let's see what happens. It works. But with that, we only change the current instance on the device. So whenever I close now down the application and we come back to it again, so to the Firebase profile, and log in again, you maybe remember that we get now the information from Firebase and display them. And because we don't update the Firebase instance, we don't see now here the username, or better, we don't see it even here. So that means, oh, I think I have to make a full restart. But what I wanted to show you is that the username didn't change for Firebase. Good, so give me a second, I have to restart. Alright, so now that we get that covered, next step is to bring that all to Firebase. And with that, we have currently an out repo and a storage repo. Do we need actually a new one? I don't think so. I think we should use the out repo because it has already access to our current user. And with that, we will also be able to change the current user of Firebase. So let's do that. We go and say, because also the user controller has access to the out repo, we can do out repo dot update user or update display name. Create the method, and we also have to pass by the display name. We add the required parameter and jump into the update display name method. So what we can do now is we could just update the username. And I think that is exactly what we want to achieve, right? So what we will do is we get the current user. All right, we go to the auth from Firebase auth this time. Say we get the current user, and what we want to do is we want to await for that. So that is an asynchronous task in Firebase. And with that, we can say user update profile. And now comes something interesting. This profile is the user update info class. And this user update info class, if we jump inside, is something very special because it is actually just a map, but it offers us just two possibilities, the display name and the photo URL. You maybe remember from the last video, I created a comment that you should see up there now. And inside of that comment, I just talk that there is another method to update our photo URL. You can also pass that inside of the auth section from Firebase and keep store of that here. So instead of downloading always the download URL for the user itself, we can just save it here, receive the current user from auth package, and with that we have directly the access to that image. There is also another option where you can save your user profile image. But for now, we want to keep rolling with the display name. So we create our user update info. We change the display name to the display name. And this we can just pass by inside of the update profile down here. After a bit of cleanup, it looks like this. So now we update the display name on Firebase with that. But another thing that is interesting, we have here asynchronous, and we want still to wait for that. So before we go back, the user the screen should move forward. So we don't want to wait actually inside of the service. We changed it already for our system locally, but we didn't change it for Firebase. But we don't care how long it takes for Firebase to save the whole thing, so we can just process further. We don't have to block the UI in that case. So that's why I just leave it here. Back to our manage profile information. This is just one step, and this step I want to always do whenever the username that we have in our place is different from the username that we get from the text controller. So we want to make an if surrounding that whole thing and say that the widget dot current user dot display name is unequal to the display name controller dot text. So whenever this is the case, this will be executed. And why is that important for us? Well, we want to have it separate by the username because we don't have to check for the password for the username. The username should be always changed. But if we change the password, we want to have two things checked. First, we want to check if the current password is valid, and we want to check if the new password equals the repeated password. Later, we talk about that a bit more in deep. So with that, we check now the display names if they are unequal, and if they are unequal, we save the display name. That should be done. We don't have to wait for that. We just do it and we can go further with the rest. Now let's test if this username update actually works. So we go down here, we change our username to Flutter explained, and I press save, go back to the profile, and you can see now both values have changed. And if I close the whole app down and jump back into the app, we can actually see that the name has been saved. So our job is really well done. Okay, so we managed to remove the yellow bar on the bottom of the screen whenever we select the user input field today with a scroll view child widget. And additionally, we are now able to change our username and save everything on that. So if we go back to that, we have that. That is quite a lot. So that's it for today. Thank you guys for watching, and please leave a like button if you liked that episode. Share that video with your friends, and see you the next time. See ya guys.